Bobby Fischer was defeated by Boris Spassky in the Siegen Olympiad 1970. But in spite of that defeat, Fischer racked up an enormous score of 10 out of 13. And I'd like to show you one of his victories. This was against Svetozar Gligoric, who was the leading Yugoslav player. A very, very strong opponent. I think this game shows Fischer's desire to get the most out of every position. You know, his superb spirit, this will to win, and also his strategic mastery as well. So we join the game after 34 moves. Fischer is black here, and well, he can win a pawn like this. Bishop takes knight. But he must have appreciated that in this position, in fact, White has very good drawing chances because of this active rook and the fact that these pawns are split. It makes life very difficult for Black to convert this extra pawn. Also, the king is nothing special at the edge of the board. But Fischer wanted more. He wanted to play for a win. He played king e7. Objectively, Black isn't actually better in this position, but he wants to keep playing, keep fighting. Rook e1 from White, just protecting that e pawn, so that if bishop takes knight now, then well, you can see that this gives Black absolutely nothing. But it's not Fischer's intention to give up this beautiful bishop in the middle of the board. King d6. So he's, first of all, before he thinks about a breakthrough, he's improving the position of his king. As I said, objectively White is actually fine here, and there's a nice maneuver. Knight b1 is a good move, ready to bring the knight to c4, or also with the idea of bringing the knight to c2, and White is fine. I mean, this is a plausible continuation. So White gets rid of that bishop. The king does manage to get to a beautiful square in the center of the board. You can see the Black king is much stronger than White's king. Now White is a pawn up, but Black certainly has sufficient play here to hold the position. You have moves. You can double on the b file. You can play rook b4, just tying White down to this weak pawn. Should be a draw. But instead Gligoric played, instead of this nice maneuver knight b1, Gligoric played rook h1. I suspect he was in time pressure. In some ways this is a logical move. He wants to break open the position to bring his rook into the game. But Fischer just shuts down counterplay with this maneuver, rook h7. You can see this pawn is pinned, but it does allow h5. Now, at first glance, this looks really surprising that this rook is now tied to just blocking this pawn. But we have to look at what's going on in the rest of the board, and Fischer has succeeded in bringing his king to this superb central square. And that means there's even more pressure on this pawn in the middle. Knight e2 from Gligoric. And now a4. Just weakening this pawn. And here knight c1 is probably the best move. I mean, Black does have ways to try and press something out of this position, but objectively White could hold. But Gligoric played instead knight g3, and now Fischer managed to break through. So first of all c4, and now he didn't recapture, he just moved onto the attack. I suspect in playing knight g3, Gligoric was hoping that he could hold this pawn with the knight and then somehow use the rook on h1 more actively, but afraid he just wasn't in time. This is really dangerous. For example, if a3, just trying to hold pawns, then the rook comes in, we give a check on h4, exchange rooks. Obviously if knight takes, then this pawn drops, or this pawn as well. So king takes, and now a simple move, bishop f2. In this case, black does want to exchange bishop for knight, because once the knight goes, then this pawn will go, then the king will take this one, and after that one drops, then this one will drop. And well, you can see that this king maneuver has really proved its worth. These pawns are just so weak, and once they go, black will be left with two connected passed pawns, and that, well, at a glance we know that that is winning. So this is the problem. The active king is a problem for white. These pieces are so active. Gligoric played knight f1, and now Fischer seized his moment. Basically, Gligoric is making room for the king to come here in case of a check. Now, instead of taking this pawn, Fischer saw a fantastic opportunity. He gave up this rook. He gets the knight in return. But having got rid of that knight, then white's pawns are going to drop. And in spite of being the exchange ahead, then actually white's pieces are really poor here. White is utterly lost because these rooks are split. This is one of my big themes you might have noticed in positional themes that I stress in quite a lot of my videos, that when rooks are split, then they really don't work well together. We can exploit that. So Gligoric tries to activate this rook, but king takes. And the rook comes across to attack the pawn here. You can see how black completely dominates the centre now with the king and bishop. And rook c1, just looking at that c pawn. But also creating room for the rook. Sometimes it's very nice to attack on the second rank with the king and bishop. Rook takes pawn. Check. And now this is a great move. Black has a winning position here. But how you get to victory is still not simple, and you can make life easier for yourself. The obvious move is to take on f5. But after this, giving up this pawn, then white gets a little bit of coordination. I'm sure black is winning this position, but it's now not so simple. This bishop is a little bit loose. The king might be hassled. To avoid this, instead of taking this pawn straight away, Fischer played pawn to c5. This is a fantastic move. He doesn't rush it. And after this, life is so easy for black because that bishop is supported. The bishop protects this pawn. So that just locks everything in place. And then the king can just run riot. And in combination with the rook, it's just too much for white. And you can see that these rooks never coordinate properly. And it's actually a very simple task now. That's a nice move, because this rook was about to come back into the game. But after this check, well, the king just blocks it. And now black simply advances these connected passed pawns. I mean, this is a clear case where this bishop is certainly worth more than one rook. It might even be worth more than two rooks in this position. It's such a strong piece. Time to advance the pawns. And we can advance the pawns and also set up mating threats against the king. White is utterly lost here. Let's just see how the game concluded. It's really nothing to do. Okay, just got to make sure, protect that for the moment. Checking, of course, wouldn't help. The king would just march over to set up mating threats, actually. King here, and this would win. And now the f-pawn. And here Gligoric resigned. Isn't it fantastic that the bishop not only controls squares here and here, but looks backwards, preventing the rook coming to f6 as well. And so in this position, there's no defense. We're going to win that rook, and then, well, it's just very, very easy. Just love that from Fischer. Complete strategic domination of his opponent there. And you can contrast that with Spassky's play, where, you know, he often has this instinct for an attack. So different players. Of course, Spassky could play beautiful positional chess as well, but I do think, you know, there's quite a contrast between the two of them, and that's what made their games very, very interesting. So do check out the playlist that I have of Fischer's games and Spassky's games as well. They were absolutely brilliant players, and no doubt I'll be looking at more of their games in the future. And don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and let me know, what do you think about this game? What do you think about Fischer's style and Spassky's style? Thanks for watching.